Calling the Honourable Ruth Dyson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to begin by extending my sympathy to the Minister who introduced this bill by delivering a 3-minute speech. I have never, ever in my years in Parliament seen a Minister less enthusiastic about legislation in her name, and I notice that she's not even able to continue contributing to the debate. Mr. Speaker, she did interject, though.
Order. The member knows I can't refer. While the member said she wouldn't contribute, there was a reference or an inference that the member had left the chamber. So just be careful. Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr. Speaker, you inferred it. She didn't.
No. I said I'm not. I'm just saying be careful in the future. So the Honourable Ruth Dyson.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister, however, in an interjection, did refer to a press statement that had been made on this issue, and I invite the Minister to table the press statement, which may have been in her name. That would be logical, as the Minister who introduced the legislation. It may have been in the name of the Honourable Tony Ryle, the Minister of Health. It may have been in the name of the Honourable Joe Goodhue, the Minister for Senior Citizens. But whoever's name the press statement was in, they should go back to their office and tell their press secretary to put it on the National Party website alongside every other statement which has been issued in relation to the budget. Because Joe Goodhue, who's now claiming credit for this asset testing legislation, must have forgotten to get her press statement put on the New Zealand National Party website because it's not on there. So either Paula Bennett made a mistake in saying that a press statement was released in relation to this, or her press secretary has just forgotten to put it on the National Party website. It wasn't in the packs to the media. My colleague, the Honourable Trevor Mallard, has reminded me. It wasn't in the budget speech delivered by Bill English earlier in this debate. It hasn't been mentioned anywhere, but suddenly, under urgency, we are introducing legislation which, in my view, breaches the contract, at the least which has been made with the 170 people who are currently in residential care and who went into residential care on the understanding that they would be subject to the legislative asset testing regime. Those 170 people deserve an apology from the government, in my view. But if that's too good for the government to offer, at the very least, they deserve an opportunity to have their say before a select committee. The Minister, in her introductory speech, said that this legislation was necessary for the sustainability of the asset testing regime. Mr. Speaker, in this financial year it will save $4.5 million. The government spends $94 billion in the coming financial year. If it is necessary for the sustainability of this regime to save $4 million, then this government has put us into a bigger financial crisis than any of us have imagined. We had earlier in this debate around the budget the tragic sight of Bill English turning the poor old paper deliverers upside down, shaking them to get their few cents worth of tax money out of them. And now we see the same minister saying to the elderly of New Zealand, there's nothing in it for you in this budget, but actually can we have $4.5 million out of your pocket this year so that we can continue giving tax cuts to the wealthiest New Zealanders. Budgets are about choices. That's right. There are always limits on what can be spent. That's what budget decisions are about. But to pretend that this is necessary for the financial sustainability of the asset testing regime beggars belief, Mr. Speaker, and Minister Bennett should be ashamed of herself. Tim McIndoe, in his equally short and thoughtless contribution on this debate, it was one of his better speeches, referred to the ageing population and the increasing percentage of the ageing population in New Zealand as a problem. Well, Mr. Speaker, he's part of that problem. He's part of the generation that will increase the percentage of older people in New Zealand as a total. I agree with him on that point. He is a problem. People in the Waikato have been referring to him in that way for some time. But I don't consider that this is a problem that we should therefore park on the sidelines and say, let's get money out of them. The fact that we in New Zealand will have an increasing number of people who are older as a percentage of our population should be celebrated, because it means that we have improved the health and well-being of people, and we need to ensure that they have genuine choices about what they do, how they participate in our society, and they should be respected for that, not classified as a problem and be used as a way of penny pinching and getting money to pay for other things that the government has chosen to pay for. $4.5 million is not going to save New Zealand, nor be part of a great vision for economic growth and prosperity. The Dominion Post editorial got it right this morning when they said loose change won't pay the bills. They were referring to the tax grab by the government of the poor old paper delivery. The youngest kids in our society who are working now having to pay tax. The Dominion Post tomorrow should repeat the headline but talk about the $4.5 million that this government, penny pinching under urgency in its change to the asset testing regime, will make. Mr. Speaker, as I said earlier, I don't think that this is going to solve any issues at all that New Zealand is facing. It should not be a move that's considered under urgency. We should give older New Zealanders the decency and respect that they deserve and at least refer this legislation to a select committee. Other colleagues from Labour, from New Zealand First and the Green Party have made very important contributions about the nature of this debate. A select committee would enjoy that debate because it's an important one to be held. This bill, being introduced under legislation passed through all stages, is the biggest mark of disrespect that older New Zealanders could have. And I say to the Minister responsible, Paula Bennett, and to the Minister of Senior Citizens, Joe Goodhue, that they should be ashamed of this move.
I call Alfred Naro.
Thank you, Mr.